What is music? In this lesson, I'm going to help you define music. Any form of art is an expression of creativity and skill. We know of visual forms of art such as painting or sculpture. Music is an art just like painting or sculpting, except that we create this art using sounds. In other words, music is an oral form of art. Visual is what we see, oral is what we hear. I like to define music as painting with sounds on a canvas of time. A painter uses the brush and paints beautiful pictures upon a blank canvas. A musician uses their instrument to make beautiful sounds. They create art. Art on the canvas of time. Now, since we use sounds to make music, we first need to understand the qualities of sound. Sound by itself has three main qualities: pitch, dynamics, and timbre. As musicians, we also include another quality, that is time. Now let's define each quality. Let's start with pitch. The scientific name for pitch is frequency. To help you understand pitch, I will use the following analogy. Let's imagine a bike. And let's imagine a bike rider riding the bike at a very slow speed. If we were to mimic this speed with a sound, we'd go Now imagine this bike rider at a faster speed. If we were to mimic this speed with a sound, it'll go like Well, we can tell whether the bike rider rode fast or slow with your eyes shut. Do you know what quality of sound helps us identify this? Yes, it is pitch. Our ears can recognize pitch. When the bike rider rode slow, the pitch was low. And when the bike rider rode fast, the pitch was high. Therefore, pitch is the quality of sound that tells us whether the sound is low or high. Let us take another example of pitch. When preparing a milkshake or smoothie, we can identify the change of sounds. When the knobs get moved from 1 to 2 and from 2 to 3. We hear a higher frequency when we set the mixing knob at a higher speed. And finally, the sound drops in pitch when the mixer gets turned off. Let's try another exercise together. Now, I would like you to mimic the siren of a fire brigade. Let's do it together at the count of 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Do you know what we just did? We created a spectrum of frequencies from low to high and from high to low. Now, sound isn't something tangible, that is, it is not something that you can touch or hold in your hands. But we can always imagine. We can use our imaginations. Imagine we have some superpower and we can touch sound. Now, the siren sound that we just created, let's imagine that it looks like a long strand of noodle. And let's place it on an imaginary table. Listen to what happens as I slide my finger across this noodle. 1, 2, 3. Now, with an imaginary knife, I'll chop this long strand of noodle into tiny segments. Listen to what happens when I touch these chopped pieces of that noodle. I hear some pitch, and if I touch the pieces one at a time, we have a set of notes that we can make music with. Each piece of this noodle gives me a different pitch. Remember, these pieces represent pitch. So what we get here is called a melody as I touch or play these pitches. Now, as an artist, I can rearrange these pieces of noodles in a creative pattern on an imaginary timeline. I not only can place them on the timeline, but I can also repeat some pitch notes. We could sustain some of these pitch notes for longer durations. Scientifically, the pitch of the sound, as I mentioned earlier, is represented using a unit called hertz. Humans have a listening range from 20 Hz to 20 kHz. Musical notes could be written in hertz. For instance, 440 Hz could represent a musical note. Now, writing every musical note with numbers is not practical. We use letter names instead. Now that you have understood the quality of sound that we call pitch, we will move on to another quality of sound called dynamics. Dynamics is nothing but volume. That is, the sound can be loud, a sound can be soft or quiet. The best way to understand dynamics is to imagine a car passing by. Let's also assume that the speed of the car is constant. So when the sound source is far away, it sounds quieter, but it gets louder as it approaches nearer to where you are. Okay, so imagine. You may have been annoyed by mosquitoes buzzing around your ear sometimes, right? You can barely hear the mosquito when it is far away, but as it approaches near to you, you can hear the change in dynamics. Now it's easy to confuse between pitch and volume. The mosquito you heard in this example changed dynamics. It did not change its pitch. If it did, it would sound like That's not what happened, right? Alright, now that you understand the difference between pitch and volume, note that we can have a high pitch sound that's very soft in volume. La. We can have a high pitch sound that's loud in volume. La. We can have a low pitch sound that's soft in volume. La. And we can have a low pitch sound that is loud in volume. La. So pitch and dynamics are two qualities of sound, but they differ from each other. Let's learn the third quality of sound, and that is timbre. When we listen to music, we can quickly identify the sounds of various instruments such as a violin, guitar, or piano. All these instruments have different timbres. Timbre is nothing but the texture of the sound. Not only in musical instruments, but even with our voices. Our voices are very different. The timbre of our voices is what makes each one of us unique. So far we have learned three qualities of sound that we use to make music. We understood what is meant by pitch, dynamics, and timbre. Let's move on to the final quality of sound that musicians use. This final quality of sound is the duration of the sound in time. A musician will sustain musical notes for various durations of time. Some sounds may be sustained long, and some for shorter durations. We will study the role of time in a lot more detail in the following lessons. So, here is a quick summary. Music is an art that we create using the qualities of sound. The four qualities of sound are pitch, dynamics, timbre, and time. Pitch is the quality of sound that tells us whether the note is high or low. Dynamics is volume, loud, soft. Timbre is the texture of the sound by which we can recognize instruments. And finally, time tells us the note's duration, whether the note must be sustained for long or whether the note must be sustained short. So that's all in the first lesson. See you in the next lesson.